The boardroom on the 42nd floor smelled of fresh espresso and panic at 8:17 m. Marcus Hale, still in his gray coveralls, ripped the 214-page acquisition contract from CEO Elena Voss's hands and slammed it onto the mahogany table. His finger stabbed page 17, clause 9. "The buyer unwittingly assumes unlimited hidden liabilities," he said quietly. "Over $800 million. Elena Voss, crisp navy Armani suit, gold Patek Philippe flashing on her wrist, stared at him for a beat, then laughed bitterly. The night cleaner translated it. "Fine, I'll pay you my entire bonus, all $2.8 million, if you're not making this up right now." She had no idea the man pushing the mop cart was the only person in the building who could actually kill the trap buried inside the deal. What secret skill had he buried for 6 years while everyone looked straight through him? Tell me in the comments right now. Which country are you watching from? Every morning at 3:50, Marcus Hale arrived at the service entrance of Apex Dynamics with the same faded blue lunch bag and the same quiet purpose. He cleaned the empty executive wing so he could be done by 6:10, drive home, and have oatmeal waiting on the table the moment his 10-year-old daughter Sophie opened her eyes. The rest of his life was built around not answering questions about the 6-year gap on his resume. Sophie's asthma specialist ran $1,400 a visit, cash only, not covered by the company health plan. The old Civic needed a $2,200 transmission rebuild or it would die on the side of the highway again. One more missed overtime shift, and they would be packing boxes for the third move in 4 years. So Marcus kept his head down, pushed the mop, emptied the trash, and let the polished world walk past him. This morning the world had not walked past. Elena Voss had stormed through the freshly mopped marble lobby at 7:40, ruined her $400 Louboutins on the wet floor, and snapped at the yellow caution cone without reading it. Then, when the entire 37-person merger team discovered that none of them could read the original German-language aerospace contract, she had pointed straight at the janitor still pushing his cart down the corridor. "Bring him in," she ordered. "The night cleaner. Maybe he knows more German than the 3 outside council were paying by the hour." The laughter that followed still echoed in Marcus's ears as the team filed into the boardroom. Richard Lang, lead negotiator, charcoal Brioni suit and ostrich-skin loafers, had smirked loudest of all. Now the same room crackled with a different energy. Marcus stood at the far end of the table, the contract open in front of him. In his left uniform pocket, he could feel the small, clumsily folded origami swan Sophie had made from a pharmacy receipt 2 weeks earlier. He touched it once, the way other men touch dog tags. When the team returned, Elena's voice had lost some of its edge. "The lawyers confirm your first point on clause 9, but they say the rest is clean." Marcus's eyes stayed on the page. They missed the environmental cleanup schedule in Dresden. Page 44, $270 million, undisclosed. The room temperature seemed to drop. Richard Lang's face paled beneath his perfect tan. He reached for the contract. "I think we've taken enough of the janitor's valuable time." Marcus kept reading, calm, relentless. Non-compete clause on page 61 locks Apex out of the entire European market for 7 years. Pension liabilities hidden inside a Swiss schedule on page 89 total another $112 million. Each new trap landed like a stone in still water. The polished executives shifted from laughter to discomfort to something close to fear. Lang's ostrich-skin loafers squeaked once as he took an involuntary step backward. Elena watched Marcus the way someone watches a lit fuse. She no longer looked at the lawyers on speakerphone. She looked only at the quiet single father in gray coveralls who had been invisible to her for 6 years. 73 minutes later, the first cracks in a $1.9 billion deal had already appeared, and the man who had found them was just getting started. He touched the origami swan in his pocket again and turned to the next page. Marcus stood alone in the empty conference room at 10:42 that night. The overhead lights buzzed faintly casting long shadows across the mahogany table still littered with coffee rings and half-empty water bottles. He pulled the origami swan from his pocket, its paper wings slightly creased from the day's tension. The swan had traveled with him since the divorce papers were signed 4 years earlier. A 6-year-old's clumsy birthday gift, folded by small hands that no longer reached for him the way they once did. He smoothed one wing, then tucked it away again. The next morning, Elena sent the text at 6:05 a.m. conference room. Bring coffee if you want any. We start at 6:30 sharp. Marcus arrived at 6:29, carrying a thermos of black coffee brewed at 4:47 in his small apartment kitchen. The scent of it cut through the sterile air of the 32nd floor. Lang was already there, sleeves rolled up on his Brioni shirt, Patek Philippe glinting under the fluorescence. Elena sat at the head, hair pulled into a severe bun, legal pad ready. The same 3 outside lawyers dialed in again, their voices now carrying a trace of irritation at the early hour. Marcus took his usual seat at the far end, coveralls still bearing yesterday's faint oil smudge from the maintenance bay. They attacked Clause 117 first, a licensing snag buried in subparagraph D. The German voices on speakerphone rattled off citations from Munich case law. Lang leaned forward, confident again. See? It's standard. Nothing to worry about. Marcus waited until they finished. Then he spoke without looking up from the binder. Subparagraph D references a 2019 EU ruling that was overturned last March. The new precedent is in the Dresden Administrative Court file 4471B. If this deal closes as written, Apex loses exclusive rights to the titanium composite process. That's $412 million in projected revenue gone by year 3. Silence stretched. One of the lawyers cleared his throat on the line. We were not briefed on file 4471B. Elena's pen stopped moving. She stared at Marcus like he had just spoken in a dead language. He kept going. Page 117 also contains an embedded force majeure clause that triggers on any German environmental audit rated higher than Class 2. The Dresden plant is currently sitting at Class 1.8. That audit is scheduled for next Tuesday at 9 a.m. Lang's ostrich-skin loafers tapped once against the carpet. How the hell do you know that? Marcus turned the page. The swan's folded edge brushed his fingers through the fabric of his coveralls. He said nothing about the quiet nights he had spent in the records room 3 floors down, cross-referencing purchase orders against regulatory filings while the rest of the building slept. He simply kept reading. By 11:13 a.m., they had uncovered 2 more landmines. One involved a hidden royalty escalator tied to inflation indices that didn't exist in the current EU framework. Another revealed an unreported lien on the Munich fabrication facility placed by a creditor no one in the room had ever heard of. Each revelation dropped the projected value of the deal by another $80 to $120 million. At 1:47 p.m., Lang stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. We're not letting the night janitor rewrite a billion-dollar merger. Elena, call security if you won't leave. Elena didn't move. Her eyes stayed on the stack of corrected pages Marcus had quietly passed across the table. 3 full pages now, each line written in that same economical handwriting. Numbers, dates, core file references, exact dollar amounts that made the outside lawyers sound suddenly uncertain. She finally spoke. Richard, sit down. We're not done. Lang's perfect tan had gone blotchy. He sat. The afternoon wore on. At 3:22 p.m., the German lawyers discovered Marcus had been right about the Class 1.8 audit. A fresh email from their Berlin office confirmed the rating had been downgraded only yesterday. The speakerphone erupted in rapid German. Elena muted them for a moment and looked directly at Marcus. How long have you been tracking this deal? He met her gaze for the first time all day. Since the day the first memo crossed my desk 6 years ago. I empty the trash in the legal department, Ms. Voss. People throw away a lot of paper. She didn't blink. Neither did he. The swan stayed in his pocket, a small weight against his hip. At 4:08 p.m., one of the outside lawyers, the most senior, finally asked the question everyone had been avoiding. Mr. Whoever you are, you keep citing original source documents from 2017 that were never digitized. Where exactly are you pulling these from? Marcus reached into the battered leather satchel he had carried in that morning. He produced a single faded green folder, edges soft with age. Inside were photocopies dated November 14th, 2017, each stamped with the original engineer's approval seal. The seal that had belonged to the man who designed the very composite process now at the center of the merger. He slid the folder across the table without comment. Elena opened it. Her breath caught at the signature on the bottom of the first page. The same neat handwriting that had been correcting their contract for the past 31 hours. She looked up slowly. This is impossible. Marcus said nothing. He simply turned to page 143 and kept reading. By 6:55 p.m., the room smelled of cold coffee and frayed nerves. Lang had loosened his tie. The Patek on his wrist read 7:03 when he finally stood again. This time his voice carried a different tone. Not anger, something closer to dread. We have 19 hours until the final board presentation tomorrow at 2 p.m. If even half of what this man is saying is true, the deal dies in that room. And so do half our jobs. Elena rubbed her temples. The speakerphone lawyers had gone quiet 10 minutes earlier. One of them finally spoke, voice stripped of all earlier confidence. We need to see the full, unredacted due diligence file from 2017. The original one, not the sanitized version we were given. Marcus closed the binder. He touched the origami swan through his coveralls again, feeling the sharp point of its beak. Then he stood, gray coveralls against the expensive suits, and spoke the first full sentence he had offered all day. I can get you that file, but it will cost you something none of you want to pay. The room held its breath. What? Lang asked, almost whispering. Marcus looked at each of them in turn, ending on Elena. Acknowledgement that the man who has cleaned your floors for 6 years is the same man who wrote the original patents you're now trying to sell. Elena's face went very still, the kind of stillness that comes right before a storm breaks. The next morning at 5:50 a.m., rain hammered the floor-to-ceiling windows on the executive level. Marcus arrived carrying the faded green folder, plus 3 more just like it, each one labeled in his own hand with dates from 2015 through 2018. The scent of old paper and ink filled the conference room when he set them down. Elena was already waiting. Alone this time. No Lang. No speakerphone lawyers yet. Just her and a fresh legal pad and the faint smell of the lavender shampoo she always used. She spoke before he could sit. Last night, I pulled the original incorporation papers for Apex Dynamics. The ones from 2014. There's a co-founder listed who was bought out in 2018 for $1 and the return of all intellectual property rights. That co-founder's name was redacted in every copy I could find. But the signature on the buyout agreement is identical to the handwriting in these folders. She slid a single sheet across the table. The signature at the bottom read M. J. Calder. Marcus looked at it for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket and placed the origami swan on the table between them. Its paper had yellowed slightly over the years, one wing permanently bent from being carried daily. Elena stared at the swan, then at him. You're him, the original engineer, the one who designed the entire titanium process before Lang forced you out and rebranded the company under his own name. Marcus said nothing. He simply opened the first new folder and began marking corrections on page 209. This time Elena didn't call for outside counsel. She watched him work, the rain beating steadily against the glass. Every so often her eyes drifted back to the origami swan resting between them like a fragile truce. At 8:17, M. Lang burst in, hair still wet from the rain, Italian shoes leaving faint tracks on the carpet. He stopped short at the sight of the 4 green folders and the paper swan. What is this? Elena didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on Marcus. This is the man who built the company you're trying to sell, Richard. And he's been cleaning our toilets while we cashed his patents. Lang's face went through 3 separate colors. He reached for the nearest folder. Marcus placed a calm hand on it before he could open it. Not yet. We still have 14 hours until the board presentation. And there are 17 more traps in this contract that will trigger automatic regulatory review in Berlin if they're not fixed. Lang's mouth opened, closed. The ostrich skin loafers stayed planted exactly where they were. Marcus turned to the next page. The rain continued outside. The swan remained on the table, wings slightly open now, as if it had finally been allowed to breathe. At 11:34 a.m., Elena's assistant rushed in with a fresh printout from the German regulatory office. The Dresden environmental audit scheduled for tomorrow had been moved up. It was happening at 2 p.m. exactly, the same hour the board was supposed to vote on the merger. If the Class 1.8 rating stood, the entire deal would be frozen under EU compliance rules for a minimum of 9 months, possibly longer. Lang slammed a hand on the table. This is sabotage. Marcus looked up from the contract for the first time in 90 minutes. No, this is what happens when you ignore the man who wrote the original compliance protocols 6 years ago. The same man you fired for asking too many questions about the Dresden waste stream. Elena's voice came out quieter than either man expected. Can you fix it? Marcus studied her. Then he reached for the swan, folded its wings once more with careful fingers, and slipped it back into his coverall pocket. I can be on a plane in 43 minutes, but I'll need full access to the original plant schematics, the ones Lang buried in 2018. Lang started to protest. Elena cut him off with a single raised hand. Give him to him. Now. The private jet left the executive airstrip at 12:19 p.m. Marcus sat in seat 18C, the faded green folders arranged on the tray table in front of him. The origami swan rested in the breast pocket of a borrowed charcoal jacket that still carried the faint scent of Lang's expensive cologne. Rain streaked the small window beside him as the plane climbed through gray clouds. Elena sat across the aisle. She had insisted on coming. Lang had been ordered to remain behind and begin damage control with the board. For the first time in 6 years, the polished executive with the perfect tan was the one left behind to clean up the mess. Marcus opened the top folder. He began marking changes again, each stroke of the recycled pen steady despite the turbulence at 31,000 feet. Elena watched him for a long time before she spoke. Why didn't you just tell us who you were? He didn't look up. Because the man who designed those patents stopped existing the day my daughter's custody agreement was signed. I chose her over this building, over all of it. And I've been watching from the basement ever since to make sure you didn't burn it down. The plane banked slightly. The swan shifted against his chest. Elena leaned back in her seat. For the first time since the review began, she looked almost small inside her tailor jacket. The plant smelled of wet concrete and machine oil when they arrived at 3:47 p.m. local time. Technicians in white hazmat suits moved between massive vats that bubbled with the titanium composite slurry Marcus had invented in a garage 17 years earlier. The same slurry now worth 9 figures on the open market. The lead environmental auditor, a woman named Dr. Greta Mannheim, waited in the control room with a clipboard and an expression that said she had already decided the outcome. Her team had taken preliminary samples. The numbers were not good. Elena introduced Marcus as a senior technical advisor. Dr. Mannheim barely glanced at him. Marcus waited until the auditor finished her opening remarks. Then he picked up a tablet from the workstation and began pulling up schematics that had not been seen outside the original classified files. At 4:22 p.m., he identified the exact valve that had been incorrectly calibrated during the last maintenance cycle, the one that had allowed trace amounts of solvent to leak into the waste stream. A valve he had designed with a failsafe that Lang's team had quietly disabled to save 17 cents per unit. Dr. Mannheim's eyebrows rose when Marcus recited the original patent number from memory. EP 2874119B1, the one that carried his own name on the original filing. By 5:51 p.m., the audit rating was upgraded to Class 2.1 on the spot, enough to keep the merger alive. Barely. Elena stood beside him as the auditor signed the updated report. The smell of machine oil clung to both of them now, cutting through the lavender of her shampoo and the faint remains of Lang's cologne on Marcus's borrowed jacket. She spoke under her breath while Dr. Mannheim was distracted. The board call is in 9 hours. Lang just texted me. He's preparing a statement that says the janitor discovered critical errors during routine cleaning. He wants to take credit for bringing you in. Marcus touched the swan through the jacket fabric. Its paper felt warmer now, almost alive against his skin. Let him, he said quietly. We're not done yet. The sun had set over the Dresden skyline by the time they returned to the small conference room attached to the plant. Rain had followed them from New York. It tapped against the windows in a steady rhythm that matched the distant hum of the fabrication lines. Elena spread the remaining contract pages across the table. Only 43 pages left to review, but each one now carried the weight of the 4 green folders stacked beside them. Marcus opened the 5th folder. This one contained the original buyout agreement from 2018, the one that had transferred all rights to Lang for the price of $1 and the quiet removal of Marcus Calder's name from every public record. He placed it on top of the contract. Elena read it in silence. When she reached the final page, her hands trembled slightly. Not from fear, from something closer to recognition. You could have fought this, she whispered. You could have kept everything. Marcus looked at the origami swan he had now placed openly on the table between the folders. Its bent wing caught the light from the single overhead lamp. I kept the only thing that mattered. My daughter still talks to me on Tuesdays and Thursdays. That's worth more than any patent. Elena closed the folder. She looked at him for a long moment, the rain steady against the glass. Then why are you here now? Marcus touched the swan one more time. He thought of the text message that had arrived 3 weeks earlier. The one from his daughter's school, saying she needed a new backpack because the old one had finally fallen apart. The one that carried a price tag he could no longer ignore. Because some debts don't get paid with money, he said. They get paid with truth. And the truth is about to walk into that boardroom in 7 hours and 19 minutes. Elena nodded slowly. She reached across the table and, for the first time, touched the origami swan herself. Her manicured fingernail traced the fold of one wing. Then let's make sure the truth is airtight. They worked through the night. At 2:14 a.m., they found the 6th hidden liability. This one involved a cross-default clause tied to a Luxembourg shell company that would have triggered immediate bankruptcy proceedings if the merger closed with even a single uncorrected error. Marcus corrected it in 4 precise lines. Elena watched every stroke of his pen as if memorizing the shape of justice itself. By 4:37 a.m., the smell of fresh coffee from the plant cafeteria had replaced the machine oil. 2 thermoses sat between them now. The origami swan had been moved to the head of the table like a silent witness. At 6:05 a.m., Elena's phone buzzed. Lang again. The board call had been moved up. It would begin in exactly 5 hours and 55 minutes. Every major investor would be on the line. The German regulators. 3 pension funds that together controlled $480 million in voting shares. Marcus closed the final folder. Only one page remained unmarked in the entire contract. Page 891, the signature page. He looked at Elena across the table. The fatigue showed in the slight slump of her shoulders, but her eyes were clearer than they had been in days. There's one more thing, he said. She waited. Marcus pulled a single sheet from the very bottom of the last green folder. It was the original patent assignment from 2014, the one that listed Marcus J. Calder as sole inventor and 73% owner of all intellectual property. He slid it across the table until it rested beside the origami swan. "This doesn't get corrected," he said quietly. "This gets presented exactly as written. In front of everyone who watched you dismiss me 6 years ago. In front of Richard Lang. In front of the board. In front of your 3 expensive German lawyers who missed everything." Elena stared at the document, then at the swan, then at the man who had spent 6 years watching from the shadows while they profited from his life's work. Her voice, when it came, was barely above a whisper. "What happens to me when they find out I signed off on the original buyout?" Marcus met her eyes. The rain had finally stopped outside. First light was beginning to touch the edges of the Dresden skyline. "That depends on whether you choose to stand beside the truth," he said, "or beside the man who tried to bury it in a maintenance closet." He picked up the origami swan. For the first time in 4 days, he unfolded one of its wings. Inside, written in the same neat handwriting that had saved them millions, was a single line. "For Sophie, so she never has to choose between truth and survival." Elena read it. Her eyes glistened for just a moment before she blinked it away. 7 hours and 12 minutes until the board call. The man who had once been invisible was finally becoming impossible to ignore. Marcus left the conference room without another word. The origami swan stayed on the table between them, one wing still unfolded like a white flag no one had earned yet. Elena watched the door close. The faint scent of rain-soaked wool lingered behind him. She found him at 4:17 a.m. in the sub-basement server farm, the one the maintenance staff still called the closet. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Marcus sat on an overturned milk crate, sleeves rolled, surrounded by 6 open laptops. The air smelled of hot circuits and fresh coffee from a thermos balanced on a rack. "You didn't sleep," she said. "Neither did you." He didn't look up. His fingers moved across 3 keyboards at once, rerouting legacy access protocols the company had paid consultants $2 million to secure. They changed the encryption on the original patent server last year. Goo. They used my own hashing algorithm against me. Elena leaned against a server rack. The metal was cold against her back. "Richard wants the call moved up. He says there's a liquidity issue with the European distributors. He's bringing an outside counsel from Berlin." Marcus typed a final command. One of the screens flashed green. "Let him. Every hour he panics is another hour the original chain of title stays buried in plain sight." He closed the laptops one by one. From his jacket pocket, he produced a small plastic sleeve. Inside was another origami swan. Smaller, the paper aged to a soft cream. He set it beside the thermos. "For Sophie." Elena read aloud from the tiny wing he had already unfolded. Her voice caught. "You've been carrying these the whole time?" 6 years. One for every major correction I planned to make. This one was folded the night they walked me out. I kept it in the same pocket as my severance check. $240. They rounded down. Elena stared at the delicate paper bird. The same neat handwriting. The same promise. A soft alarm chirped from his watch. 19 hours and 43 minutes until the auction of the Dresden facility. If we don't stop the sale, the physical servers holding the uncorrupted 2014 files get shipped to a shredder in Leipzig. Richard already signed the transport order. Elena's shoulders tightened. "That's the crisis you were waiting for." Marcus stood. The milk crate scraped against concrete. "That's the one that forces their hand. They think the facility is worthless without the new patents. They have no idea the original schematics are still stamped on those drives. Schematics that prove I never assigned full rights. Schematics that list Marcus J. Calder as 73% owner and Elena Voss as co-signatory on the fraudulent addendum." He picked up the new swan and slipped it back into his pocket. The older one, still partially unfolded on the server rack, caught the overhead light like a small white sail. The boardroom on the 18th floor smelled of lemon polish and fear. Richard Lang arrived at 10:02 a.m. wearing a charcoal Brioni suit cut, so sharp it looked dangerous. His Patek Philippe caught the sunlight slicing through the tall windows. He didn't sit. He paced. "You assured me the maintenance man was handled," he said to Elena without greeting. His Italian shoes clicked on the marble. "Now I'm hearing rumors about missing patent pages and surprise auditors. This company is bleeding 840,000 euros a week in holding costs. The Dresden auction is our only clean exit." Elena kept her face still. In her left hand, hidden below the table, she held the smaller origami swan Marcus had left in the server room, its paper edges pressed in her palm like a reminder. "Perhaps we should delay the auction 24 hours, she offered. "Give legal time to double-check the chain of title." Richard's laugh was short and ugly. "Delay? The buyers from Shanghai are already in the air. Their bid is locked at 27.4 million. We move today or we lose the deal. And if we lose the deal, Elena, the board will remember exactly whose signature appears on the original purchase agreement from 2016. Yours." The room went quiet except for the low hum of the air conditioning. Elena felt the swan's folded beak dig into her skin. At 11:51 a.m., the first reversal landed. A junior IT technician named Tomas entered carrying a single external drive. He looked at Richard, then at Elena, then at the 6 board members already seated in stiff silence. "Sir, the forensic audit you ordered just finished. The 2014 patent files, they were never deleted. They were hidden in a partition labeled Maintenance Archive, Do Not Touch. The metadata shows the last edit was made by Marcus G. Calder." Richard's pacing stopped. The Patek on his wrist caught the light again, but this time his hand trembled once before he steadied it. "That's impossible. He was a janitor." Tomas swallowed. "The login credentials are still active. They were never revoked. The system still thinks he's head of R&D." Elena watched Richard's face drain of color. She slipped the origami swan into her jacket pocket next to her phone. The paper was warm now from her grip. Marcus was not in the room. He didn't need to be. The hidden identity was leaking out, one server log at a time. Marcus stood on the roof of the Dresden facility at dusk. Wind whipped across the gravel. Below him, loaders were already staging crates marked for Leipzig. The smell of diesel exhaust rose in thick blue clouds. In his right hand, he held the original swan from the conference table, fully unfolded now. The message for Sophie faced the sky. Elena joined him 10 minutes later. Her heels scraped on the loose stones. She carried a tablet showing the live bidder registry. 23 companies. 3 of them had just increased their offers by 20% after the morning's leaked memo about rediscovered founding IP. "You're enjoying this," she said. It wasn't an accusation. "I'm correcting it." Marcus folded the swan again, smaller this time, until it fit inside his closed fist. Every hour they spend chasing their own mistakes is an hour Sophie won't have to spend choosing between truth and survival. That's all this ever was. A new email alert chimed on Elena's tablet. She read it aloud. "Richard just called an emergency executive session. He wants me there in 30 minutes. He's bringing the 3 German lawyers. Says if I don't appear, he'll recommend my immediate removal for gross negligence." Marcus turned to face her. The city lights were beginning to flicker on behind him. "Then go. Listen to every threat. Remember every verbatim word. Because when the auction hammer falls tomorrow at 2 p.m., those words are going to taste different in his mouth." He opened his fist. The tiny swan rested on his palm between them, wings creased but intact. Elena took it. For the first time, she folded one of its wings herself. Inside, on a fresh blank space he had left for her, she wrote a single line in her own neat handwriting. "I choose beside the truth." She handed it back. The paper felt lighter now, as if the dead itself had grown wings. Marcus slipped the swan into the same jacket pocket. The fabric had grown worn at the edges after 6 years of carrying the same promise. Down on the loading dock, a forklift backfired. The sharp crack echoed off the brick walls like a starter pistol. Somewhere inside the building, servers continued to hum, still carrying Marcus Calder's original fingerprints across every line of code. The rain started again just after midnight. It tapped against the glass of the temporary war room Marcus had set up on the third floor. Elena sat across from him once more. Another green folder lay open between them. Page 892 now carried fresh margin notes in both their handwriting. The symbolic bird rested on the corner of the table, smaller than ever, its message for Sophie visible to anyone brave enough to look. A new mini-crisis had just arrived in the form of a courier packet delivered at 1:47 a.m. inside, where the original transport manifest for the server crates. Richard had personally signed them at 11:59 p.m. the night before. The manifest listed every drive as scrap electronics, zero residual value. Marcus studied the signature. The ink was still slightly raised. He set the paper down beside the swan. Elena's voice was steady but quiet. If those crates leave the building, the physical proof leaves with them. The Shanghai buyers land in 90 minutes. They're expecting a clean facility, not a warehouse full of evidence that this company was built on a lie. Marcus leaned back. The chair creaked under him. For a moment, the only sound was rain on the window and the soft rustle of paper as he turned to the next unmarked page. Then we stopped the trucks, he said. One manifest at a time. One corrected line at a time. The same way we've done everything else. He reached for a new sheet of paper. Folded it once. Twice. The familiar creases took shape under his fingers while Elena watched. Another swan began to emerge, smaller still, its wings already carrying space for the next truth they would have to write before sunrise. The debt was still being collected, and the man who had once been invisible was now standing in the only light left in the building. The folding stopped. Marcus held the half-formed swan between thumb and forefinger, its neck still blunt, wings untrimmed. Rain drummed harder against the glass. Somewhere down the corridor, a printer woke up, spitting out fresh copies of the forged manifests. Elena checked her watch. 3 hours and 51 minutes until the auction. The courier packet still lay open like a wound. Richard's signature stared back, bold and final. The same looping are that had once approved Marcus's termination papers 6 years earlier. The ink smelled faintly of fresh toner and old betrayal. Elena's phone buzzed. She read the screen once, twice. Her shoulders dropped half an inch. Security just stopped the first truck at the loading dock. Driver's claiming he has a hard deadline. Shanghai delegation's private jet touched down 23 minutes ago. They're in the black Mercedes now, heading straight here. ETA, 41 minutes. Marcus set the unfinished swan beside the first one. 2 paper birds now guarded the corner of the table. One slightly larger, the other barely the size of a matchbook. Their folded wings caught the weak desk lamp light and threw tiny shadows that looked like broken wings. He stood. The motion made his bad knee pop, the same knee that had carried him through 3 tours and 1 quiet resignation no one ever thanked him for. Show me the dock feed. They moved together down the dimly lit hallway. The temporary war room's door hissed shut behind them, leaving the 2 swans alone under the cone of light. Downstairs, the air tasted of diesel and wet concrete. 2 semi-trailers idled under the sodium lights, engines grumbling, wipers slicing arcs across windshields. A third truck had already been turned away. Its taillights disappeared around the corner of the access road. For security guards, kids in their 20s stood in a nervous line holding clipboards like shields. Marcus walked straight into the rain without a coat. Water beaded on his faded navy jacket, the one with the stitched name and veil that the company laundry had given up trying to replace years ago. The lead driver, a thick man with a company badge that read K, Lamont, stepped forward. Rain streamed off the brim of his cap. Look, I got a manifest signed by the CEO himself. Says these crates, are heading to the shredder in Jersey. I don't get paid to argue with paper. Marcus stopped 2 feet away. The smell of wet asphalt rose between them. Those crates contain proprietary drives worth $47 million in recoverable IP. Your manifest is wrong. I'm correcting it. Lamont laughed once, short and wet. With what authority? You're the night janitor, man. Richard made that real clear when he canned you in front of the whole floor. Marcus didn't blink. He pulled a single sheet from inside his jacket. The paper was already damp at the edges. Authority of the original patent holder. Serial numbers match drives I designed in 2017. Check the bottom line. He handed the page over. Lamont scanned it. His eyes narrowed at the faded but legible signature at the base. Marcus Vale, Lead Systems Architect, Clearance Level Delta 9. The same signature that had once appeared on the very first server blade schematics, now locked inside those crates. The driver looked up. Something shifted behind his eyes. This real, every digit. Lamont exhaled through his teeth. The rain kept falling. For 10 full seconds, the only sound was water hitting metal and the low idle of the trucks. Then he reached for his radio. Hold a second load. New manifest incoming. Elena appeared at Marcus's shoulder, holding a tablet. She had already begun the corrections, line by line, drive by drive, changing scrap electronics, zero residual value, to classified R&D assets, estimated recovery value $38.4 million. Each keystroke sounded crisp in the wet night. Her tablet pinged with an encrypted alert. The Shanghai delegation had diverted. Their Mercedes was now pulling through the front gates. Headlights sliced through the rain like search beams. Richard himself sat in the back seat. They could see the pale oval of his face behind the tinted glass. He had brought the buyers early. He was accelerating the timeline. Marcus watched the car glide to a stop 20 yards away. The rear door opened. Richard stepped out in a charcoal Brioni suit, Italian shoes already speckled with rain. The Patek on his wrist caught the floodlight and flashed once, cold and expensive. He saw Marcus. For the briefest moment, his polished mask cracked. Recognition. Then it smoothed again. Still here playing with paper. Marcus? The building's being sold in 4 hours. Take your little birds and go home to your daughter. The words landed exactly where they always had. Low, precise, cruel. Elena's hand tightened on the tablet. The security guards looked anywhere else. Marcus reached into his jacket again. This time he produced a third sheet. He folded it once in the rain. The paper darkened as it absorbed water, yet his fingers moved with the same calm rhythm he had used for 35 nights. The new swan took shape smaller than the last, no bigger than a silver dollar. Its beak pointed toward the approaching buyers. He didn't answer Richard. Instead, he spoke to the head of the Shanghai team, now stepping from the second car. A woman in a tailored navy coat, hair drawn back so tight it looked like black lacquer. Ms. Chun, invoice 4471 is still active. The drives inside those crates were never decommissioned. They contain the original compression algorithm that powers your entire Pacific routing grid. If they leave tonight, your network loses 6% efficiency by Q3. That's $41 million in the first year alone. Chun stopped. Her translator whispered rapidly in her ear. She looked at the tiny paper swan Marcus, now held out on his open palm. Rain beaded on its folded wings. She took it, turned it over once. Her eyes widened a fraction when she saw the micro-printed serial numbers hidden in the creases. Numbers that matched her own sealed bids from 2018. Richard's voice rose, smooth as ever, but now carrying the faintest tremor. This is theater. The manifests are signed. The sale is clean. Marcus met his gaze. The rain fell between them like a curtain. We still have time to correct every line you signed. Richard, every lie you stamped. Elena stepped forward, holding the updated tablet. The new manifest glowed under the dock lights. Every crate reclassified. Every signature line now bearing Marcus's original authorization stamp, pulled from the archived server only he still knew how to reach. The Shanghai team murmured among themselves. One man was already on a hush call, speaking rapid Mandarin. Richard's polished shoes shifted in a growing puddle. For the first time, the $8,400 leather looked merely wet. He opened his mouth, closed it. The debt was still being collected, one corrected line at a time. Marcus turned back toward the war room without another word. The two larger swans waited upstairs. The newest, smallest one now rested in Ms. Chen's gloved hand. Its message for Sophie, written in ink only visible under black light, reads simply, "Daddy's almost home." Behind him, the trucks shut off their engines. The rain kept falling. Elena caught up with him on the stairwell. Their footsteps echoed off concrete that still carried the faint citrus smell of the industrial cleaner Marcus used to push across these same floors for 6 silent years. She handed him a fresh green folder. Page 917 now needed margin notes. Inside the war room, the original swan had dried. Marcus leaned forward. The lamp warmed the side of his face, revealing the faint scar along his jaw that no one in this building had ever asked about. He picked up the pen. The debt was still being collected, and the man once invisible was writing the final corrections in the only light left. The pen scratched across page 918 at 4:07 a.m. One more margin note. One more correction only Marcus knew mattered. The fourth paper swan sat beside the others, wings still damp from the glue. Its beak pointed toward the window where the rain had finally stopped. Elena watched him, arms crossed tight over her hoodie, the same one she'd worn since the first morning. She smelled of cold coffee and worry. A new courier packet arrived at 4:19 a.m., slid under the door with a soft scrape that made Elena flinch. Marcus opened it without hurry. Inside lay a single affidavit from the county clerk. Richard had filed an emergency motion at 2 a.m. claiming the entire lot of archive servers contained proprietary algorithms belonging exclusively to Apex Dynamics. The motion carried Richard's personal signature in ink so fresh it still carried the faint metallic scent of the executive fountain pen he favored. Elena read it aloud, voice cracking on the final paragraph. They're saying if the crates are opened before the hearing, it voids the entire estate sale. The judge could issue an injunction at sunrise. We'd be locked out even if we win the bid. Marcus didn't answer right away. He reached for another sheet of green paper. His hands moved with the same steady rhythm he'd used in the cockpit at 30,000 feet on 287 separate classified missions no one here would ever see. The fifth swan took shape in under 90 seconds. Tiny. Perfect. Its wings now held space for the court file number, 24 CV 1842. Mini crisis number 4, he murmured. They're trying to bury the evidence before we can prove it exists. Elena paced the narrow war room. The original swan from midnight had begun to curl at the edges, its paper wings still carrying the faint crease marks of every correction they had made across the last 35 days. Marcus placed the newest bird beside it. 5 now, their shadows stretched long across the green folder under the single lamp. He stood. The chair creaked like an old friend. Outside, on the loading dock 20 feet below, Richard's voice carried up through the cracked window. The polished baritone that once commanded quarterly earnings calls now sounded hoarse, frayed at the vowels. He was yelling at 2 night shift attorneys, demanding they wake the judge's clerk immediately. Marcus leaned close to the glass. The scar along his jaw caught the lamplight again, a thin white line earned on a night no payroll record would ever mention. He spoke without turning. Call the storage yard. Tell them we're moving the crates at 5:15 a.m. sharp. Use the side gate, the one with the broken camera. Elena hesitated. That's trespassing. No, Marcus said. That's procedure. The original transport manifest lists me as the authorized chain of custody officer. They just never updated the database after they walked me out. She stared at him. The question hung between them again, the one she still hadn't asked out loud. Who exactly had they fired that day? but she only nodded and reached for the burner phone. The call went through at 4:41 a.m. The yard supervisor answered on the second ring, voice thick with sleep and the unmistakable click of a lighter. Marcus listened to her end of the conversation, fingers tracing the edge of the green folder. When she hung up, she exhaled hard. He said the motion just hit his inbox too. He's got 30 minutes before the injunction locks the gate, but he owes me one from when I covered his shift last Christmas. He'll look the other way for exactly 11 minutes. Marcus checked his watch. 4:49 a.m., 19 minutes until the yard opened. 11 until the injunction possibly closed it forever. They moved without another word. Elena grabbed the green folder. Marcus slid the 5 paper swans into a small cardboard box, the same size as the one they had handed him the day they terminated him. The symbolic weight of it pressed against his palm as they slipped out the service stairwell. The dock below was empty now. Richard's polished Italian shoes had left damp prints on the concrete, already drying in the pre-dawn chill. Marcus paused at the bottom step, listening. Somewhere in the distance, a forklift engine coughed to life. The smell of diesel mixed with wet asphalt and the faint trace of Elena's strawberry shampoo. They reached the side gate at 5:02 a.m. The security camera hung crooked on its mount, lens pointed at the sky like it had given up years ago. The supervisor waited in the shadows, arms folded, breath fogging in the cold. He didn't ask questions. He simply handed Marcus a ring of keys and looked the other way when the chain clattered open. The crates sat in Bay 17, 27 of them, each one stamped with faded red ink. Property of Apex Dynamics. Do not open without authorization number 4471. Marcus ran his hand across the nearest one. The metal felt cold, familiar. He had loaded these same crates himself on a rainy Tuesday in 2019, back when the company still ran on his original architecture. Elena whispered, 6 minutes until the injunction hits the system. Marcus produced a small crowbar from inside his jacket. The first nail squealed at 5:07 a.m. The sound echoed off the corrugated roof like a scream held too long. He worked methodically, one slat at a time. The scent of old circuit boards and dust rose up when the lid finally lifted. Inside lay server rack A01, the original prototype. The one Richard had ordered destroyed the same week, he walked Marcus out the front door. Marcus knelt. His fingers found the access panel he had installed himself. The hidden thumbprint scanner still worked. One press. A soft green light blinked once. The drive inside began to spin with a low, comforting hum that no one else in the company had heard in 6 years. Elena's eyes widened. That's the root ledger, Marcus finished. Every transaction since day one, including the one that shows Richard personally authorized the deletion of my name from the patent filings. He pulled a single folded document from the bottom of the crate. Page 1 of 1417. The original assignment of intellectual property, dated 3 months before the public termination. His signature sat at the bottom in the same steady hand that had just folded 5 paper swans. Elena took it. Her hands trembled. For the first time in 35 days, her voice carried something like hope. They resealed the crate at 5:13 a.m. The supervisor's footsteps retreated quickly down the next aisle, leaving them alone with the diesel smell and the distant clang of the rising gate. Marcus slid the green folder back under his arm. The newest swan peeked from the top, its tiny wings still carrying the court file number like a battle flag. They were back inside the war room by 5:29 a.m. The lamps still burned. The original swan had dried completely now, wings rigid and proud beside its growing flock. 6 birds total. Their shadows looked larger on the green folder, almost ready to fly. Marcus sat. The chair creaked again. Rain began tapping the glass once more, right on schedule, like the building itself was keeping time with him. At 5:41 a.m., the phone rang. The auction house. Richard had just filed an additional objection, claiming the entire proceeding should be delayed due to new evidence of fraud in the estate valuation. The clerk sounded exhausted. The judge had granted a temporary stay. Elena sank into the chair opposite him. She looked at the row of paper swans, then at the scar on his jaw, then at the green folder that had become their entire world. "You keep saying that number like it's a countdown," she whispered. "But every time the clock resets, you get calmer. Who are you, Marcus?" He didn't answer. Instead, he reached for another sheet of green paper. The sixth swan took shape under the lamp, smaller than the last. Its wings now carried a single line in the tiniest handwriting. Invoice number 4471, original signatory. The rain fell harder. Somewhere below, Richard's voice rose again on the dock, sharper this time, the polished tone cracking like thin ice. The sound of expensive shoes pacing back and forth carried up through the floor. Marcus placed the newest bird beside the others. 6 now. The flock was growing. He picked up the pen again. Page 919 needed margin notes. The debt was still being collected, one deliberate fold at a time. And the man once walked out with a broken badge and a cardboard box was still writing the final corrections in the only light left. At 6:22 a.m., the next courier packet arrived. This one thicker. The smell of fresh notary ink and desperation. Richard had pulled strings at the state level. A new temporary restraining order. The crates could not be referenced, photographed, or bid upon until an independent forensic audit was completed. Elena read the highlighted paragraph twice. They want the audit done by Richard's own former firm. Conflict of interest doesn't even begin to cover it. Marcus checked his watch. He folded the seventh swan without speaking. Its wings held the auditor's license number and the exact timestamp of the motion, 6:14 a.m. The war room felt smaller now. The rain drummed a steady rhythm against the glass, matching the creak of the chair every time Marcus shifted. The original swan watched over its growing family, wings stiff with every correction they had made since that first morning. He set the newest bird down. 7. Their shadows on the green folder looked like they might lift off at any moment and carry the whole room with them. Outside, Richard shouted for another attorney. The sound echoed off the wet concrete like a man losing altitude fast. Marcus leaned forward. The lamp warmed the side of his face again, revealing more of the scar this time, the one that ran from jaw to collarbone if you knew where to look. He picked up the pen. The grind continued. One mini crisis, one small reversal, one more bird. The next morning, the board voted to cancel the auction. The Shanghai buyers withdrew after reviewing the recovered root ledger. Every hidden liability had been corrected, every fraudulent signature exposed. Richard Lang was escorted from the building by the same security team that had once walked Marcus out 6 years earlier. Elena sat with Marcus in the now-quiet conference room as the sun rose over the city. The flock of 7 origami swans rested in the center of the mahogany table between them. She slid a single document across to him, the new patent assignment restoring his name and his 73% ownership. "You built this company," she said. "It's yours again if you want it." Marcus picked up the original swan, the one Sophie had folded from pharmacy receipt. He smoothed its bent wing one last time, then looked at Elena. "I didn't do this to get the company back," he said quietly. "I did it so my daughter would never have to watch her father choose survival over truth. The patents, the money, the title, those were never the point. The point was standing up after 6 years of being invisible." He folded the swan's wing closed again and slipped it into his pocket. "But I'll take the bonus you offered on day one, $2.8 million. It will cover Sophie's treatments, the new transmission, and a lot of oatmeal breakfasts. The rest of the company stays with you, Elena. Just run it the way it was always meant to be run." For the first time in weeks, Elena smiled, small and genuine. She touched the smallest swan, the one that read Daddy's Almost Home. "Deal," she said. Marcus stood, gray coveralls against the expensive suits still hanging in the closets down the hall. He gathered the green folders one last time, then walked out of the boardroom without looking back. The man who had once pushed the mop cart with his head down now carried the truth in his pocket and the future in his daughter's name. The debt was finally paid,